Good morning and welcome to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the formula. We are setting a standard for accountability, the ownership of your choices, and responsibility, that ability to respond to those choices. Let each care for self and all will be cared for.
If you don't mind, zoom in. So Tim Pool, the announcement is made with Chris Cuomo. Huge F up. Chris Cuomo faked being in COVID lockdown. His brother is a murderer. No redemption arc. PBD goes. CNN is very disappointing, right? Now, this is after, if you can show the picture at the bottom, with us showing that Chris Cuomo joins Valuetainment. So go up and show what I responded to Tim Pool. My response was, Tim, I trust capitalism. One of these days, the market will wake up and realize what our vision was all along. I'm extremely comfortable being misunderstood before the market validates our vision. I respect your impatience with our vision. In the meantime, keep kicking ass. Here's Tim Pool. The guy is very good at what he does. Sincerely, he's very good at what he does.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick Bet-David. He has this whole entertainment conglomeration going on, similar to like Daily Wire. And he does a podcast. And Tim Pool, if you're familiar with who Tim Pool is, he also does a podcast. And they have a very similar format in their show. It's very interesting to listen to them because they have an interesting take on things. They both seem to have some people, I don't want to say on the inside, but they have people that they're able to reach out to in order to get information and that kind of stuff. You can check out both their shows. I like both their shows. I think they do a really good job. I'm not able to watch them all the time. Tim Pool I watch more often because he seems to have the guests on there that I really enjoy. The segment that I want to talk about with ideology is that basically, when we're talking about the whole idea of ideology, that the ideology is something that you accept something almost incredulously, and you're not willing to change your mind about it, and you start to adopt and adapt it as though it's fact. And when you are in your ideological phase or moment, you're unwilling to see new information. And it's one of the things that I notice more and more over the past few years. I'm sure it was always there. I guess I just noticed it happening more these days. And so the other day, and I'm going to show a clip later on from this Howard Kurtz Media Buzz interview that he does with Donald Trump. But the more a person is stuck in their ideology, the less they're able to pivot. Now, when we talk about a person's state of health, what is a state of health? It's your ability to be able to manage your life, to have your accountability, your responsibility that we talk about, ownership of your choices, and making that connection between the choices you make and the outcomes that occur. So, and a lot of times people are not able to do that. Hopefully this podcast is one of those things that helps them to be able to start to, have that awakening in much in the way I did, and to start making those connections and make those choices, those everyday moment-to-moment choices that basically create your life. Now, when you get into your ideology, you basically start thinking or believing or emoting about things, and you're unwilling or incapable of being able to pivot or move away from it. Or you think that just because a person did something 5 years ago, well, they're always going to do it. It's like, well, maybe that's what they did back then. Maybe that was the pattern of their behavior then. But your state of health and listening to this podcast and moving yourself through your different stages of your own awakening, your own change, your own personal development, if you will, you move to a place where you don't necessarily have to live a life like that. You can get new information, and with the new information, you're going to pivot. With the new information, you're going to rethink what's going on. You're going to start looking at things differently. One of the things that I want to make sure that I mention is that the attachment to an ideology, it keeps you from seeing reality. And essentially that there's no comprehension going on. Because what happens is the ideology gets triggered because the emotions get triggered. And we know that emotions are not a place to live, but people will get triggered into their emotions, and because they have an attachment to an ideology, they're no longer able to see reality. And so then they're not able to bring in new information and to have more comprehension. And the thing to understand about that is what's coming into question is somebody's intelligence, somebody's ability to integrate new information and come to new conclusions. A great sign of somebody's intelligence is that ability to take in new information, process it, see of it what is reality, what is factual, and then to make a change, again, to pivot to whatever the new thought process would be. So the reason I wanted to bring this clip into our discussion is that I find it very fascinating that a person can tell themselves whatever they want, right? They can delude themselves into thinking, hey, I'm doing something good for society, or I'm a guy that believes in free market principles and that kind of thing. But what's interesting is that it's also revealing something about your integrity and your character, right? Because what you're about to hear with this other clip is that Patrick really is looking at this as a business decision. Okay, hey, listen, I'm all for free market capitalism, Milton Friedman and all that jazz. However, you're wanting to get into business with somebody that was complicit with his brother, Andrew Cuomo, in the murder of other Americans. Not one or two Americans, and not that that's a value judgment that one or two is not so bad. No, it was thousands of people died because these two people made a decision that they were ideologically bound against President Trump and anything that he had to say as far as medical protocols that were possibilities for people. And to be able to manage the situation differently. I mean, I find it very interesting. I'm thinking out loud here, but I find it very interesting that a lot of the information that was utilized at the very beginning was based on models. It wasn't based on real information. I'm going to just turn you to, all of the stuff regarding climate change. It's based on models. It's not based on scientific information that has been proven over time. We see that they use clips of things, they spot check things, and then that's what they use as their information to try to get out their ideology. And that's what these two people did. And that really is the crux of what Tim Pool was basically saying in that. And some of that background is that for him, not sorry, but Chris Cuomo was complicit in the murder of people with his brother Andrew against Americans, for the people of New York. If I'm not mistaken, I think there was a Fox News person, Janice Dean, who, she listened for everything that she was able to do. She picked up the gauntlet and ran with it. And, she harangued on Andrew Cuomo on a daily basis, multiple times a day, because she lost family to the pandemic because he was ideologically bound and would not change what he was doing. He decided he was hell-bent on whatever it was that President Trump wanted. He wanted nothing to do with it. And so, thereby, what happened? People died. He lied, Chris Cuomo lied, and people died. But now what I think is amazing is from the clips that you saw earlier in the year in January when I did that whole thing about people wanted grace. No, there's no grace for people that were so irresponsible. Their level of irresponsibility and lack of accountability led to the death of your fellow Americans. Listen, I don't know about you, but that's not okay with me. Why? Because I have basically my own formula, my own set of standards that say we do no harm to others. Right? If I'm not trying to defend myself because somebody's coming at me with a gun, we do no harm to others.
We are that way. Our relationship with Chris, having people here, the reason why I'm kind of having this conversation and bringing folks from sides that we disagree with is because we need more debate. The moment more of us keep talking and we're all agreeing on everything, the conversation is over. The more you have people around you that you're not and you're debating and people are watching, there's a reason why the live that we did with Candace and Chris was a #1 live worldwide that day. Why? Because the world is saying, I don't want echo chambers for a very, very long time. And when I pray, and I'm asking God, bring the right people here that help us unify America. Simple. It doesn't mean help us make more money. Help us unify America, and we need the right leadership team. That's our vision, and that's my reaction to it. And Tim, I want you to criticize us as much as you want. I welcome it. I respect it. I appreciate it, because if we have any kind of blind spots, I want to see it, but it doesn't mean you're right. The market's going to determine who's right or wrong. And by the way, that's going to take about 10 to 20 years, but we are very patient.
Of course, I'm fascinated by his virtue signaling of, when I pray, that the right people come here. Okay, that's an interesting thing to pray for. And then he says, it comes out of his mouth. He says, this isn't about making more money. Now, why would you say something like that? Why would you feel the need to tell us that? Only one reason that I know at this point, and if there's another reason, then, I'm willing to hear it. But the only reason why you tell us something like that is because you're trying to throw us off of what the reality is. The reality is you do want to make money. You have a self-interest. I understand it. You're sitting there making the comment that, we don't, people don't want an echo chamber. Okay, I agree. I think we should hear what other people have to say. We definitely want to hear what you have to say, because you are revealing to us who you are, that your integrity is lacking. Why is it lacking? Because you have no character. Why do you have no character? Because you have no responsibility and accountability. You are willing to hire a person who was complicit with his brother in the murder of your fellow Americans. Okay. So thank you very much. I appreciate that you revealed yourself. You don't need to say anything else. Thank you. We'll see where all this goes. And he says, oh, well, this, we won't know for 10 to 20 years or whatever it was that he said. It's like, seriously? No, I think it would take a lot shorter time than that. Reality will have its way very quickly, and people will see it. If you don't believe me, look at the Elon Musk thing with Don Lemon. I'll let you research that. But I think Patrick really revealed something about who he was in this whole process back and forth, and that he is not willing to have a different level of responsibility with his integrity and character. His formula, his standard is, I'm okay getting into business in bed with somebody like Chris Cuomo, and realizing and understanding that Andrew Cuomo, his brother, helped to kill other Americans.
On TikTok, as you know, the House voted the other day overwhelmingly to ban TikTok unless the company, the Chinese owner, would sell it off. 197 Republicans. Now, when you were president, you tried to ban TikTok. The courts stepped in. You now say you don't think it should be banned because you think Facebook is worse and this would benefit Facebook. But doesn't that let TikTok off the hook? Because most parties, the consensus in both parties is that this is a threat to national security, having it owned by a company that's, of course, influenced by the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, I know a lot about TikTok, and I gave the option of banning it, and I had it pretty much done. And I said, I didn't do any jawboning. I didn't do anything. I just said, you guys want it banned if you want. And Congress probably didn't want it banned, et cetera. It wasn't something that I was demanding. If I demanded, I think I would have gotten it. But there's a danger to banning it with, freedom of speech. There's many different problems.
Extremely popular.
But here's what I did
people.
find. I found Facebook to be extremely dishonest. And what would happen is if you ban TikTok, if you take it away, and we have a new concept, but if you take it away, those people are going to go into Facebook. And Facebook, in my opinion, was worse than TikTok by a lot.
So this had nothing to do with your meeting with a billionaire who happens to have a 15% stake in the parent company, ByteDance?
Actually, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. No, he's the head of a club. In fact, a club that I would say that I, generally speaking, don't get along with, but now I do. And I've had my good moments and bad moments. I used to call it Club for No Growth. Now I call it Club for Growth again.
You've changed.
But no, I never spoke to him about that.
I like that moment with Howie where he goes, "Oh, you've changed." Duh. Again, what's interesting to me, and I'm just kind of pointing out my take on this, is that Howie is ideologically bound to an idea that somebody like Trump is incapable of making a change, or that in making the change, he's flip-flopping. So this past Friday, I was talking to my friends John and Dan at dinner, and we were having this discussion, and this whole idea that, this person just flip-flopped. One of them had brought it up, and we were kind of kicking it around the table and discussing it. It's like, there's a difference between flip-flopping in that you are, basically, taking a pulse of, which way the wind blows, or that you're actually taking in new information, new data. You're bringing in new comprehension to your understanding of something, and with your own intelligence, you are taking that information and then you're making a change. You're making a pivot to the new information and what it's bringing you and how you want to move forward. That's very different between, that and saying, hey, which way does the wind blow? What's the poll say about people? No. What do you say about this situation? What is it that you're thinking about? What is the new information? What is the new comprehension that you have brought to the table regarding any particular subject? And it's just interesting that Howie is really having a hard time with the fact that, and it's just a very small moment, right? Where he's just saying, you've changed. If you listen to people when they say stuff like that, they are indicating something to you. Really, they are. They're giving you that moment of insight into their thought process. And their thought process is, I don't think that people are capable of change. I don't think that people have comprehension or the ability to take in new information and make a change to something. I think, ideologically, once I've seen something or I have decided on something, I'm never going to change it. Listen, I talk to you every week about the formula, the standard. If something came to me that made me think otherwise and that I needed to shift my ideas that, this accountability stuff is for the birds, and I would say that. But the reality is so far, that's not the case. And so what we're seeing then in real time with these different people is they're revealing things about themselves in an ideological fashion that they have made a decision about things and they are unwilling or incapable. They do not have the intelligence to be able to take in new information and to pivot and then move forward and keep going. If you're unable to do that because you're locked into your emotions, because that's what gets triggered for people that are ideologically bound. They get very emotional about something, and they're not willing to look at any other information. That is true about what people think about President Trump. That is true about what Patrick thinks about Chris Cuomo, and that he's not even willing to look at the fact that Tim Pool has pointed out a reality to him, that Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo were complicit. And instead, he wants to virtue signal by saying, I want to bring more people, into the discussion. I want to have, more, conversation about things because, otherwise we're in an echo chamber. Okay, we're going to see how that goes, buddy boy, because I'm very skeptical. And that music means that we are at the end of another podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this weekend. Hit that like button if you would. Subscribe to this podcast if you are so inclined. Check out my book at lulu.com. And then share this with your family and friends. You just never know how it might help them and change their life and add something and enrich it. I'm sure they would be grateful. I would be grateful as well. I'll see you here next week. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for.